This is the last version that Yang Chen-pu taught to the public, not to the few family members. Okay. The other thing
Understood.
we would talk about Yang Chen-pu is Yang Chen-pu was the third son of the third son. Okay. He
Right.
was
Yes.
family head. Yang Chen-pu was sent to Shanghai by the family to spread the art,
Got you.
not because of his greatness. He became great because he's a big guy.
Yeah.
You know, if you're 320 pound, of course you're going to be able to throw a guy around that's 120 pound ring and wet.
Right
Like
on.
this is not. It's like really need to just be logical with this thing. So here we are. Is that I'm learning slowly. I'm learning the form. The form needs to be right. And look, there's a video up there. If someone wants to have a good laugh, look at me doing Yang style in 1992. You know, not only did I have really bad fashion sense, but my form is appalling.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it's appalling. It's hilarious. And I put it there to show people you grow.
Yeah. Over
You
time.
grow. Okay.
Yep.
These pictures of Yang Chen-pu when he's some people saying 1918 and some people saying 1922, 1923, when it was in the first book, and then the second book, they're much different.
Yeah.
Yang Chen-pu was taught by his older brother, two older brothers, I might
Yeah.
say,
Hmm.
also by his cousins.
Mm.
Okay. Now, conveniently, the Yang family for many years removed Yang Xiaohao and Yang Xiaofen. Okay.
Got you.
All right. They've been removed. They're in the lineage that's on my website. It's very clear because I know who Sigel trained with.
Right
There's
on.
5 members of that generation, third generation. Okay. Not one, 5.
Got you.
Okay. And now you also have the young Bunhouse son.
Right on. Yes. Yes. I saw you
So
on your site.
Yang
Yeah.
Xiaopeng. So Sigel trained with Yang Xiaopeng from what they call in China is 7 years old, which is
Mhm.
about 5 or 6, give or take what time of year it is.
Sure.
And, that's a significant thing. That's a really significant thing. So it's not that Fu Sheng Yuan just turned up in Shanghai in 1925 and
Yeah.
he just happened to marry the most famous master's granddaughter. Like, seriously? This is not the culture. That
Right.
was an arranged marriage.
Yes. 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 Yes.
That was an arranged marriage because it was already seen that Fu Zongwen had the qualities to take the Yang family into the next generation. This was before Yang Chen-pu was in Shanghai.
Got you. Got you. Yes.
Come back to what I was doing in my training.
Hmm.
So the traditional method is that you need to spend about 7 years on the form first before you do push hands. Now, you may do push hands, but you're not going to be doing push hands with the master
Right.
in most cases. I do know some Kung Fu brothers that did it early.
Okay. Okay.
And that was only because at that time that we're actually doing real combat push hands sparring, which is
Oh,
like
wow.
the practical method, guys. That's exactly what we did.
Oh, okay.
We
Okay.
did that
Okay.
stuff. Yes, and I remember when I went to Perth and stayed with Sifu, I got my ass owned and I got smashed because I wasn't doing this type of thing. And and it's true, you come in and approach it too hard, and you come with all that background. When we talked about body memory, and I'm coming in with all that hard shit
Yeah.
still in my body, and it didn't work against the guys that had been doing it with Sifu for 4, 5, 6, 7 years on a
Yeah.
weekly basis, and throwing each other around and having a crack. It was quite funny, but that just made me more determined
Got you. Got you.
to to learn that. But it was also, this is normal because when you go to a school, you need to go up through the ranks
Right on.
type of thing. And I didn't get deterred by this. If anything, it just made me want it more.
See, I see. Yeah, you didn't get discouraged. Like some were like, oh man, not gonna get bullied around by all these guys all the time. Yeah, yeah.
No, the guys that were there probably laughing when if they ever hear this, they'd probably laugh and laugh and laugh.
Yeah, yeah.
Because it's true. I got dropped on my ass. This is normal. It's like a boxer. The boxer's going to get punched in the face.
Yeah.
Mike Tyson's going to get punched in the face in a couple of days' time. If he doesn't, well, fantastic for him. And that might go to his head thinking he can do it again. But that is normal.
So in these circles, was it a easy access? And what I mean by easy access, I mean like I know they have public classes and things like that, but I'm talking about what was the recognition for them to say, okay, you're being brought more into what we call the inner circle of things. Was it just you dedicated training, or was there a sense about character, sense about understanding the true knowledge of the body? Was there any kind of rites of passage just to get inside the inner circle, if you will?
I think it's about connection with the teacher, and I think again here you kind of start to read people. Okay. We had a talk in early 93, in the first few months about me not doing other styles.
Okay.
So it was about May 93 that I moved away from Jolly Fun. And that was the time that I went to China, but I was still searching.
Got you.
I was still searching. I went away. I saw him a few months later. People don't know Sifu traveling. So what he was doing, he was coming to the East Coast, doing workshops a few times a year and staying for 2-3 weeks. And I was just tagging along. I was just following him around,
Thanks.
Okay, this is another thing that's really important. So in the early years, and I think a lot of people say, "Oh, I've trained with this great master and I met them once." You, as I was saying before, the teacher is one teacher and the teacher has many students. So you're buying for a bit of time there. And you don't get a transmission in a weekend. You don't get a transmission in 10 years. And for a lot of people, they may not get even a transition in 20.
Interesting. Is that when you say transmission, does that mean something more significant when you say, there's the audible, the verbal lessons, but the feel, the touch, is that considered part of the transmission when you actually get your hands on? Because you mentioned earlier, you don't really get the push with the master, or until later.
Not in the beginning. Not in the beginning. No. I'm a teacher. I just come back from Europe teaching, and I did push handset with a couple of people. There was 50 odd students in the workshops I did, and did I do Ting Jin with people? Yes. Ting Jin is, people know, Ting Jin is just a following drill. Okay, it's the most basic drill. It's not push hands. It's ting ting. Ting ting is not. It's a following drill. You're developing a characteristic. Now, when I talk about Ting Jin, the worst thing you can do to a student is push them when you're doing this.
Got you.
You want to mess them up. Okay, and I find this really deplorable. Is I see videos of people pushing really unstructured, disconnected people, telling them to be soft, telling them to be weak, and then pushing them on their ass to make themselves look good. It's disgusting.
Yes, it is. Sure.
And so this thing starts slowly. So in my thing that I really spent a good 7 years on the form before I really started doing push hands. Now the form didn't just mean the long form. This sword and saber was taught in this period. Now saber is essentially important. Saber is the Yang family's weapon.
Got you.
You need to learn the saber to get lots more depth in the Tai Chi. Now what's really interesting that there is a lot of lines of Yang style that don't have saber because they were never taught it.
Understood.
There is a book. Sifu had a book with all the things that Yang Chenpu taught. His father got the book from Yang Chenpu after he died. And it was all the disciples. So there's a lot of people that never were taught a lot of things.
Interesting.
And this is basic stuff.
Okay.
This is before we get to talking about Jin Lidiana Chansa Jin. Okay.
Yes.
Now, so this step is that you're now spending and you're learning a form and you're practicing, but really what you're trying to do is unlearn.
Interesting.
You're not learning. You need to unlearn to learn.
Got you.
So in a body level. So I need to change the way my nervous system works. I need to make sure my hand is always in the right position, always in the right. This is like Bushido. You need to master it.
Got you.
Okay. Now, it's kind of interesting because if you didn't understand structure and function, you would then make the assumption that even though if my hand was up here in single whip, what is it? Is it the same dynamics as being in this position? And there's no, this completely different because if I load you, you are going to have a different internal response to the movement and pathway of force.
Understand.
Now, we have a force that is we have to work with, and it's gravity.
Mhm.
This is extremely important. Understand the physics and gravity and what some of the reasons why she is slow. It's to use gravity because gravity is your resistance.
Right on.
And again, I'm getting off the track a little bit, but
No, you're still on track. Trust me, you are. It's all
say in
connected.
my process, and I've done this push hands. I've done my form, and I've been about 7 years. And now in this journey, I've started going to Perth. So I first went to Perth in '96.
Okay.
So at this time, I never stayed in his house, and I wasn't a disciple at this time. I stayed just down the road in a hostel, hired a car. I was there for about 2 weeks, 13 days.
Okay.
And we just start working on the form. So I started having private lessons every day. I was with Sifu for maybe 6 to 10 hours, depending on what he was doing. I'd go to some of the classes, we'd go and have dinner, I'd go and hang out with him late in the evening. And it was at this period where he started having this conversation with me. And Qinhan Li Shen, Sumi Doren. So Qinhan Li Shen. So it's about diligence, respect, perseverance, this
Sure.
sort of things. And probably the biggest conversation that we had coming into him saying to me, and he give me an ultimatum: if you want water, water mean is inside you, because inside in the body is that you stay more fluid. So they call it water, not
Got
sugar.
you.
You want a water.
Understood.
You need to be a tuti. Okay, so his translation is tuti, but technically tuti is a student. I was already a tuti.
Okay.
So some people translate tuti as disciple.
Understood. Okay.
So they are actually not the same thing.
Okay.
So I didn't do it at that time, in '96. I went back, I saw him again later in the year. We had the same discussion about this. And at this time, I started getting into competing.
Okay. Okay.
So I started doing and competing in a different way. So I'd already done forms, and I'd already um, done things with the kung fu and the karate. So I was really into breaking when I was in the karate. I was really into forms and really into fighting. But this time I come in and there was competition starting in Australia. Not
Okay.
really, not push hands, but all style martial arts. So I
Sure.
did the Saber, and I actually won
Nice.
biggest competition in Australia, and it was Australian all style martial arts. And it was the only time I won real prize money.
Oh, awesome,
So
man.
it's really big. So I actually won the overall forms and overall weapons
Awesome.
in this competition. And, beautiful big trophy, big stone based trophies, fantastic stuff, and as I said, with some money, it was nice.
Yeah.
And that started to change things. I think Sifu seeing there was dedication, that I was willing, and I was by myself, and I was teaching. And at that stage, I was in Sydney, and I was training, and I was doing enough stuff to make Tai Chi visible and looking dominant against the karate and the kung fu styles. How did I do this? Because I did the form with Fagging, I did the form faster, I did the form really low. Okay, and the same with the weapons.
Awesome.
And this is back to that thing about having a really low stance. And when I went back to Perth a year later, I did the first of my disciple ceremonies. So I
Okay.
actually did it twice. I did it one in his house, okay, just with him, and there was another guy, Gavin, was there, and his daughter and his wife. Yeah, and I did that one in the house. And there's a photo of me afterwards, little skinny kid. And and then a couple of years later, I did it again in Handong, which is the hometown near Guangfu.
Right, my phone.
Yeah, so I did that big public, and the big public one's about Shu.
Got you. Right. You mentioned that to me the other day.
That's done with, Chen San Lei was at that
Oh, wow.
ceremony. There's a good photo of us the next day. We looked a right mess. We got drunk together.
For real? Oh, that's cool.
There's a photo of who's on When's Memorial. We're like,
That's too funny. So in your opinion, and I'll stay on the subject too as well, but in your opinion, what is the significance of the discipleship versus being part of the lineage, but not going that far into the responsibility, I guess, if you will.
look, I think people take what they want to take from it. The responsibility is predominantly, I think, is respect. But funny enough, over the years, I've watched people get to that level and become a disciple or tuti in that sense, and then slacken off their training.
Okay.
It's kind of like I made it.
Yes,
People go to
yes.
uni and
Rest
they
on our
do
laurels.
study, and when they get into the real world, they don't study anymore.
Interesting.
I think that shows, okay, and time's a big factor.
Yeah,
Time's a big factor in you improving, and it's also a big factor in you decreasing.
sure.
And I actually viewed this as just a step that I actually now had to learn it.
Interesting.
So I had a different view, different take on this, and maybe it's because of the other things that I did.
Okay.
And Sifu was as much a mentor and a father figure for me, and and especially the things changed around 2000 because my father died young.
Oh, wow. Sorry.
No, that's fine. But it's always a really, really interesting thing. And in your learning process, there's nothing that's given to you. You need to learn it for yourself.
Indeed.
Okay? And this is really evident because I'm in the Tai Chi community and I'm reading what's written, and some of it's just comical. Like it's not good for us as a community. Okay,
Yeah,
it's actually it's not healthy because we need to connect with people and help them grow and take them as far as they want to go with that. How
sure.
far I go is my choice. I'm the one that got up in the morning and trained 2 hours before I went off and taught in the
Right
day,
on.
not anyone else. I'm the one that it's like those famous. I like thinking of people like Arnold Schwarzenegger, and
Hmm.
and you read his books and you read about the work ethic. You need to have good work ethic. So
Indeed.
it's not about my teacher can open a door for me, but he can't teach me. I have to learn it. He has to facilitate. Now, whether he wants to or not, it's another thing.
Sure.
Okay. And that's really important. Now, I'm going to say this that I had this tenacity, and this started coming out more in the late 90s and early 2000s with my teacher, and I used to piss him off. I would challenge his foot positions. I would start challenging what he was doing in class, and I would say this to him. And sometimes he'd get the shits
Yeah.
with, and sometimes he'd go, "Oh, Damon, you're too much," you know. More practice, maybe you'll understand, type of thing. But what was happening is that we're doing lots of push hands, especially with my Kung Fu brother. And I was doing it in my school, even though I hadn't learned it completely from him. And at
Sure.
this stage in the late 90s, he had shown me single hand push hands.
Hmm.
Now, his thing is, it has to be perfect.
Interesting.
Okay. There's none of this big variations. There's none of like, this is all bullshit.
Yes.
It needs to be absolutely perfect, that you can be loaded with as much force as the other person can give you. It needs to be, you need to do it in a way that I start letting you go, and I need to, boom, and I need to, boom, and my body response has to be exactly what the classics say. I neutralize by turning the waist, and then I respond in an attack. Okay. Thus, and how do I get softness? Okay, here's another thing. We're going to go into another subject, and softness is probably a good thing to cover. How do I go to be soft here? Is that I have to disconnect one link in the chain. It's
Yes.
not about anything else. You take a chain that's all welded together, and then you have one link that's not welded. There is so much possibilities of movement.
Right on.
Following the principles, the elbows are hugely important. Okay. Now, dropping the elbows, not sinking the elbows, just letting them go and releasing them. Allow the force to come at your center. Where is the axle most strongest? It's not on the outer edge of the wheel. It's actually turning, and it's got the power in the middle. Okay? Hence the classics, everything comes from the waist.
Right.
Now, this is really, really interesting. So we need to have and I say this is, don't think of the word softness or song. You're not going to get it. Sifu used to say you need to seek serenity. All right. Serenity serves you better.
Got you.
Okay. So you need to approach like holding a baby. Not being weak. If someone that's weak and relaxed can't hold a baby.
Right on.
I need to hold the baby.
Yes.
And he would say these things, you need to develop serenity. Okay?
Excellent.
Sung is releasing a joint in the kinetic chain.
Right.
And here's where I started building some of my anatomical knowledge and my massage knowledge and my sports training and all the people that I started, and it started to cross over. Everything started to cross over. It took 10 years. Everything started to
Yes.
lay here. So this thing is that I'm training a body to become very structurally grounded. Okay. But it also needs to be very fluid. It's the same. Okay. And we need to build the mountain and the river.
Oh, nice analogy.
Saying is, be solid as a mountain, move like a great river. You can't do that if you focus only on softness, and you can't do that if you focus only on internal. There needs to be a paradigm. Everything needs to shift. It needs to go from firm to release, not
Understood.
release.
Okay.
And you need to train your release, because what happens in the body is that we have a mechanism which is inherent in our DNA. It's the fight and flight. So when that responses happen, and this is why you don't push students in the beginning, especially in Ting Jin games, is because you've got to set off that fight and flight reaction, which means the flexors tense up.
Indeed.
What we need to do is we need to learn the opposite. We need to switch the flexor reflex off. Okay. And then allow our body then to be in a different position. Now, if we've trained being in a really good stance all the time, means we can allow their force to go to the ground. Okay.
Indeed.
It goes to the center and we can turn it. And from this, and at this stage, I didn't understand this. If we're getting back into the 90s, I didn't understand this thing in the late 90s and 2000s, but something was starting to happen. And in my process is that with the single hand push hands, is that we would do this till the other practitioner could not pull you or push you off your static stance.
Right.
Okay, and we're getting into the realm of what we call cross hands. Now, cross hands was the original competition, not what we're seeing push hands.
Yeah.
So you needed to do this in a movement pattern and then attack, because you have your neutralization and your attacking is all there. If you're pushing someone and you start grabbing and feel this, you get destroyed.
Sure.
If
Sure.
you're a real skilled player, they'll just jam you.
Yeah.
Okay. And this for me went on for quite a period of time. In 2000 and end of 2001, I did my first competition in China and I got third. I don't know
Okay.
why third, because I was in the final.
Ah.
China's very unique, very
Yeah.
unique.
Yes. Yes.
Started competing in China earlier than that. I did my first competition in 1999,
Uh-huh.
and it was forms and saber. I actually won the form event in Handan, Guangfu.
Oh, wow. Congratulations. That's awesome.
Yeah. So Yang Chan's 200th anniversary games.
Oh, awesome. Oh, that's
Yeah, so I got to meet all the family then. It was really good.
yeah.
And so I got to meet the other side of the family, you know, all the Yangzando, Yangzanji, all these guys. And
Ah, I
it
see. I
was really,
see.
really, really interesting back then. But um, yeah, so it was interesting because I had the skill. I had the skill not to go to ground and be pushed out, but I didn't
Yes.
have the skill to throw the guy, especially someone bigger, you
Ah,
know,
yes.
because I
Yes.
hadn't developed that level. But here we are with Sifu, and I come off the ring, and I've done well, you know, I'm fine there. Later on, he did have a student there, Jason, that actually won the push hands there in Handan, one of
Oh,
my
awesome.
brothers. But who I think Jason was the very first foreigner, not Mario. Jason.
Mm.
Yeah, there's no
Oh,
evidence.
awesome. Yeah,
There's
yeah.
no
Yes.
evidence on the other end, but we're not going to go down that track because
No, no,
it just
not
created
now.
shitstorm.
Yes.
Um, I get off the ring, and now Sifu goes, Damon, I will now teach you push hands.
Oh, you earned it right.
And I'm
Yeah.
thinking, what the hell? Why not teach me before I
Four.
could do
When
that?
I needed it. Yes.
And yeah. But you know, and things started to change. You know, we start moving on, and I was working and in my field, and we moved a few times houses, and I North Coast, and I had that football experience, and I come back into Newcastle, and I started becoming quite good at what I was doing as a therapist. So,
Right.
and I got into real estate a little bit as
Oh,
well.
okay. Okay.
Right, because I had that engineering background. So, and I
Right.
just like being busy, you
You
know,
like building, right?
interesting. You become a sports person and you become diligent. You start being able to do things. You know, I had a practice, and you know, I was doing a little bit of buying and selling houses and student accommodation and all this sort of thing. And so I started developing the resources so I could spend more time training.
Excellent.
And it
Excellent.
was always my goal. So then I started traveling to China one, two, three times a year or
Wow.
more. And I'd go on tours with Sifu,
Hmm.
and I'd go on tours with James, and competitions, workshops, and I just followed them.
Got
You know,
you.
and I was spending, 6 to 8 weeks a year in China, following either
Wow.
one. And that was in China. We went to Hong Kong. We went to Japan, many, many places in China. And Beijing, Handan, Wudang many times went there with them. Wuhai on the other side. Guangzhou many times to Guangzhou with James especially.
How's that
And
received? Like, not because you're a foreigner, but because you have this person who has his lineage and he's going to all these places and things like that. I don't want to call it like the sense of jealousy, but the recognition of like, oh dang, he has this student with him there where he goes, and this guy is like renowned for his skill. Like where the crowd's very big, where the crowd's like, in the sense like, oh man, I want to get this information. This guy's next to him here as well. Should I go through him to get the information because he may be more lax in giving the
oh,
info and things like that.
I think so. Look, it wasn't just me.
Okay.
It wasn't just me. I got a couple of Kung Fu brothers that often I would meet up and we'd travel.
Sure,
You know,
sure.
one of the guys, Andrew, he was the fastest man in Tasmania for a number of years. Like
Oh
no
wow.
person, you know. Then we've got Big Paul and Chris. There's a couple of Chris's that used to do. You know, there was half a dozen guys that often you'd meet on these trips, or you'd be just solo.
Yeah.
Um, I've never been fantastic with the language. I can speak a little bit, you know, enough to buy something,
Sure, sure.
to get a taxi and get into your motel and stuff like this. But it was very, very interesting. And there was a period there where I stopped kind of following my teacher
Okay.
in a sense. Then I started spending more time with James.
Oh, interesting.
So I must have traveled at least 20 times with James, just me and James.
Is it your age connection more
Yeah,
so?
yeah, of
Yeah.
course. He was
Yeah.
like my best friend for years,
Awesome, awesome.
you know, and this was before James was doing a lot more with the other side of the family.
Okay, okay.
So in that early 2000s, 2002 to 2012, you know, I spent a lot of time with James and, you know, time with his dad, but more time with James.
Hmm.
And part of the reason why is, and it was okay with Sifu, is that Sifu was getting a bit older.
Okay.
And I needed to learn some of the things that James was doing.
Oh, okay, okay, okay.
And because we're at a similar age, so at this time, James was doing all the still practicing really, really deep,
Hmm.
really, really low. James is also really good at the sword, really good at the saber. We never did tons and tons of push hands together, and James didn't like that. And also being the teacher's son, there's a real problem with saving face. So when we
Man,
talk about Chinese culture, and I think a lot of the demonstrations are about saving face and making face. And I don't think that's healthy. People
hmm,
got to understand this is a cultural thing. You
sure.
know, I pushed James in a workshop in front of 60 people and it embarrassed him. Like
Hmm.
really, really embarrassed him. You know, and I was getting egged on, go on, go on, go on. So I did. I did. That was at Weehai. And that was on video. I don't know what the video is, but I had a necklace with a gold nugget. James was not impressed. A slip, bam, slipped me and elbowed me and just cracked my sternum.
Wow,
He
wow.
was not impressed because, you
Sure.
know, he lost face in front of disciples. You know, this is not cool, man.
So really cool, really, really quick, real fast. So, and again, I keep alluding to this because this is significant about, some of the things that happen on my side of things, right? So, my teacher's teacher, Mr. Watson, was a 17-year indoor student of Chuki Hung, but he mentioned in an interview that they had a falling out, him, my teacher and his instructor, right? And one of the things that was part of that, he asked Mr. Watson a question about his son. It's like, hey, how come Simon doesn't go into the ring, and fight? And he said Mr. Watson's response was like, me and Simon are like this. And that was the falling out of him by asking that question. And he mentions in that, he goes, the only time I was able to move Mr. Watson when he got really pissed at me that day, right? And he said, that's the only time I moved his foot. And then he goes, that was the last time I saw him, right? Because of that, I think he infringed on that relationship between father and son, and that created that friction that ended their teacher-student relationship. For you to mention that is very significant. I think sometimes people don't realize that, because that's an offense to him. It's like, oh, what do you mean you calling out my son? Like he's not, what I mean, on that level. So yeah,
Yeah.
please do continue because that's very, very interesting and significant. I think people don't
Mm,
recognize that.
mm, mm, mm. Look, and then you've got this other thing, you know, you're in a family and there's a family dynamic.
Yeah, yeah.
You're staying with this family and you're traveling with them, you know. It's like I know everything. I was treating James an acupuncture massage and same with Sifu and you know, you get into this confidant type thing. Um, and China was different. China was really developing and really growing. in this period, and that was great, you know. And they had a huge following. The Fu's are massive, way bigger than the Yang family in China, than
Sure.
the
Okay.
Yangzando's people, way bigger.
Right. Right. Right.
We would go to workshops with the Chinese Wushu Association, and the Fus could have 200 students there, and everyone else has like 30.
Wow.
And I got to see and practice with some really interesting people. So all the factions of the Yang family I
Interesting.
practiced with, and the same with the Chen family. And it's kind of interesting when we're talking about who's connected to who, and some people claim it's like, I've never seen you. I've
Yeah,
never
I remember
seen
you saying that.
you.
Yes.
Or you're at, or you know, you're connected to you know, Tian Ling, or you're connected to this person or that person. It's like, well, those people you see are actually students at the same workshop. Is
Oh, wow.
you know, these so-called masters are coming to our workshops. And
Interesting.
well, this is just normal because they're wanting to learn too.
Got you. Got you.
And the same thing would happen in Guangfu. It would happen everywhere where
Sure.
we, you know, Wudang Guangfu. And so for my journey in the learning is that I spent a lot of time with James, okay, because of our age and, you know, some of the likes, and we've become very good friends and spent so much time together, you know, and be talking all the time on the phone. And this is when WeChat coming and all this, so you got more access and able to talk more. And that would be just what we did, you know, and I'd be the guy that'd be getting him up out of bed every day, and, you know, staying up all night with him,
Right
these
on.
things. And we would go here, there, and everywhere in China together. And it was in a sense, especially in the later years, James become like a rock star. Like a
Nice.
total rock star. It was insane, you know. He'd be interviewed by television. You know, there's interviews with me on Chinese television, and
Sure.
you know, in Wudong and Beijing and Taiwan. When I went with James the last time after his dad died to, and did the big ceremony in Yangzando.
Mm.
Like interviewed by television studios, you know, and then we'd go back and we'd watch the interview on the television.
Nice. Nice.
Things like this. It was kind of funny. But this process of learning is extremely important that it's not that there's variations, it's that we are all subject to the same physics. We're all subject to the same anatomy. We're also, you know, height and girth doesn't change the angles of the bone for people.
Sure.
If it does, it's within a degree.
Okay.
So, and the teething method that I'm using is that because now I'm exposed to so many other schools of teaching and other schools and practitioners, most of the people that come to my workshops or train with me have done Tai Chi before.
Okay.
And especially when I go overseas, you know, and I start from the very beginning and I show people how to test everything, why it doesn't work, and teach them how to find it themselves, how
Awesome.
to get connection. And it's not that I'm being rigid with the form. It's like there's a preferred position, you know, there's an optimal way to do this. And once you load this, things start to come out. And what we're trying to achieve with Tai Chi, what is the purpose? So we have to take into account if we have good structure and we have good connection and we can allow the gravitational forces move through the bones, we are going to create, in a sense, bone marrow washing or bone marrow niggung, and we're creating these things here. How to create muscle tendon washing is that you need to learn to open fully. You
Okay.
need to open the joints. You need to learn the importance of concentric movement. Concentric loading makes you much more stronger than contractile
Mhm.
eccentric. Okay, this is a proven fact. Just look at the world's strongest men.
Right.
You know, and you said I was actually lucky to work on Martin Likas.
Oh,
in
wow.
2020. Yeah, I met this guy. He's great. He's a really nice guy. I talked about a lot of this stuff with him and did some work on him and stuff like this. And only because of COVID, I was going to meet him in Australia and work at the next Arnold. But
Oh, wow. Yeah, COVID.
COVID happened. Yeah,
Yeah,
COVID
yeah.
happened. It was really bad. But this is where I've got off track. But what I'm trying to get to is that bringing all these things in is that there's a preferred way. There's a way you're gonna be able to receive £1,000. And Sifu would say things to me is, Damon, you need to be 4 ounces, but you need to be £1,000
Got you.
as well. All right, you need to be both. Okay, and when you start looking at physics and the reality of physics is that for me to contain your force, I need to match your first force. So it's not me being soft, it's me actually being the same as you, but moving with your momentum.
Right on.
So you don't crumple me. And then when I seek the opportunity or the line moves away from center, then I can turn.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So here we have another funny thing is that if you're doing fixed step push hands, unless you stay in the circle motion of your arms, it then is redundant. It's of no value whatsoever. You are better off doing something different because
Sure.
the boxers don't fight in a static stance.
Right on. Right
You
on.
need to have movement. So it's a hard thing because we've got all these people that are saying this is a traditional method, this is not. But when we go back to my traditional method learning, is that we did all these years on single hand push hands. So much so that Sifu would start, boom, trying to attack my center or center line, not my center of my body, my center line. Okay.
Right.
Better to understand that because the last thing you want to do is to dive in towards someone's dantian, into them. You want to fake that.
Yes.
I want to fake that to elicit a response, and it's your response that I retain.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
this is really important to understand that. And then this bridges over into something that no one's talking about, the role of pluck.
Yes.
Okay. Pluck is extremely important. Stop thinking about song. You
Mhm.
need to understand pluck. Stop thinking about being pun because you need to understand how to be open but not pun.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Because
sir.
why would I hand them the whole cake and keep a piece? That would be stupid. You're going to be going, woo, I get the whole cake.
Yes. Yeah.
But so this process went on, and of course, I'm working with my Gunther brothers a lot more on push hands. And then I see Sifu and I do a little bit of push hands. He would then say, you need to look at this movement, this movement, this movement.
Okay.
Now, this is where everything falls apart for a lot of people. Each part of your Tai Chi form has a relevant part in your push hands. If you have a weakness in your push hands, it needs to be resolved within the form. More
Awesome.
often than not, it's the legs and the waist.
Okay.
And this is really important about this. So developing this connection to your form and your push hands, I think is virtually lost. And this is the clincher about being traditional and trained as a Baosha and a disciple, that you spend enough time with the master to start this overlap connection, overlapping, bit more, 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 like this. So after I lost at that tournament, I started spending more time on this with
Okay.
Sifu. And he also started teaching me Jin Li Dian. Jin Li Dian is starting to go into what I would call a closed door type thing.
Excellent.
Now, the Jin Li Dian is to do with the wrist and your angles of your wrist. So if I'm rolling back here, okay, see my whole body working together.
I
I'm going
do indeed.
the wrist foot connection. Okay, so you think of it as um, a line of connections through all the joints. Now, this is where we're going to get into how the fascia is involved.
Gotcha.
The fascia is inert. It has no nervation and it has no contractile strength. But the fascia job role is to act as a lubricating film between layers of tissue that they need to slide and glide. Now, the fascia can adhere to each other, and that's when we have issues. It can be myofascial trigger point, it can be pain, pain patterns, you can develop scar tissue, thickening of the tissue, all these things happen. So here you are, is that, am I training the fascia? What I want is to learn the fascial plane lines. Now, when I started realizing these things and these connections, when we started linking this, I was already involved quite deeply in the massage and the acupuncture. And what turned out to be is that those meridian lines and fascial lines can be dissected from the body.
Okay.
So from your foot to the wrist, you can have a continual line of dissection in a plane of movement. And these are the things that are so important to the opening aspect of Tai Chi. But this has got nothing to do with the fascia, because the fascia just envelopes. What it does to do is that your fascia is healthy, it will slide and glide. Okay. It also means that you can then move on to something that not a lot of people are practicing. They do in Chen style is Fagging.
Okay.
So Sifu started teaching more of the Fagging, and the Fagging being, this sort of, and it's explosive high thing. Now, why is this important? Because Fagging is actually a method of plyometrics. Okay, you need to develop Fagging because you need to develop the tensile strength in the muscle and the ligaments so they don't snap. Okay, hence you're getting into this muscle tendon washing classics. Okay, you need to develop this. And if you don't develop this, you will not be able to apply real force in a real situation. You will need compliancy in anyone that you do it to.
Gotcha. Got
Okay?
you.
And there's also a really important thing with this because it helps you with falls prevention and injuries and all this sort of thing. It starts building this. So if we go to another little thing, if I've got good plyometrics, I did a video, have a little skit with Andy, and I was letting Andy have a crack at me. Full flight, full rip of my body.
Yeah.
Nothing happens. I just move forward, and he's laughing. He's going, "Oh my God, what the hell? How's it possible?" Because that is the result of plyometrics and the result of being able to release a link in the chain.
Awesome.
Okay, so the release of the link in the chain is what we would call a sung, but I can't all be sung.
Sure.
And which means that you can have some really good party tricks, but you need someone to use force
Right on.
for it to work. And this is funny because when we start learning the Jin Li Dian, you start to learn what we call small Jin, the rotation here, and the large the waist. But really, Jin is earth energy. It's power from the earth. It's the power you generate by pushing the earth.
Got you.
Okay, and releasing the gravitational lines through the body. And this is done in the opening and closing phases of your Tai Chi form. And this is why you need to posture check everything, even your transition lines. And this starts to build because then you become, as what a lot of people say, you have this pun. It's not pun, it's qianzong. Qianzong is this solid body that someone hits and they bounce off.
Sure.
Because I don't want to be in pung, because if a person has skill, they'll hit and then
go through. Yes.
Okay. I don't want to give pung. As if we would say make pung an illusion. So here we now got this development of my push hands. And I start doing more and more with Sifu. And this is when the real fun starts happening, because I got many holes and weaknesses, and he would target them, and he would target. And he would say, "You're not practicing. You're not practicing enough. You're not practice this properly. You're not do this properly." And this is the stage that Sifu started teaching me single movement drills.
Awesome.
I've been doing Tai Chi with him for 15, 16 years.
Mhm.
And now he starts teaching me circular drills. Why not do this in the beginning?
Yes, 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 yes.
Because it's a form-based system. And what the thing is that they're trying to teach you to just improve your health, improve your strength, improve your stamina, all these things. You're going to get some gung fu from that. But why not teach you how to do turn, sidle, and punch in a circular drill, left and right side, and you do sets of 100. That's where we went to in the mid
Right on.
2000s. And that started changing a lot of things. And because I stopped all my other stuff in the early 90s, my body started to change a lot too. I sort of grew out of that hard style where you're going to approach it, really bunker down and tighten everything up, to resist the hit. Now it's like, I'm not going to resist. I'm going to allow that to turn, boom, and I get hit on one side, boom, that one comes out on the other side, and it's the same sort of thing starts to happen. So you become fluid
Sure, sure.
with this, and that also gives you opportunity. And when you become fluid like that, you become very, very focused on a target. You become, that thing is, Sifu used to say something in Chinese which meant the same as, aim small, miss small.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And so here we got this developing more and more in my form, and bringing in the Jin Li Dian thing. And then in the early 2010s, 11s, I started wanting to do push hands in competitions again.
Okay, okay.
So the first one we had a crack at was in, I think it's 2012, um, Hong Kong.
Nice.
And 2012, 2011, it was a big deal, that Wushu festival. There was 3,500 competitors. And that
Wow.
was when China was trying to get the Wushu in the Olympics.
Yes, okay, okay.
And 38 delegates from the World Olympic Committee, all this sort of things.
Sure.
And I went in this competition and I absolutely annihilated this guy. There's a video up there and I got fouled out. The video's up there for all to see. He
Yes,
never
yes.
even got 1 point on me and I got fouled out and lost. And I just destroyed this guy. And he was from the,
Oh, I think I lost you.
yeah,
At least lost your video there.
yeah.
There you go. You're back.
He was from the Yang family line, Xiaoshang's line
Oh,
in
okay,
Hong Kong.
okay.
So it didn't go down.
Of course.
But because they found out, they found me out, and then I got reinstated the next day in the medal rounds, and they quit.
Wow.
Never got to compete again. But that says a lot, that video, I think,
Yeah,
on, and this is the way that we trained.
excellent.
So it was really, really aggressive, really, really connected, just blam, blam, bam, 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 boom, there's a
Quick
lot.
question. I have a quick question for you, and don't lose this thought because what you're saying, seems very significant, obviously for the Yang family. But outside of that, did your teacher or master ever mention about why? So the Wu, the How, the Sun, all relate themselves to Tai Chi, obviously done differently. The training methods that you guys had, were there the same underlying training methods and just performed differently in form, or were they significantly like totally kind of different, I guess, if you will?
That's a massive question. Um,